Welcome back to the Word on Fire Institute lecture series, The Idolatry of Identity, Progressive Wokeist Ideology, and the Catholic Response. In the previous lectures, we examined how progressivism appropriates and distorts essential elements of three political ideologies: classical liberalism, libertarianism, and utilitarianism. In this lecture, we turn to another foundational ideological influence, postmodernism. Postmodernism is famously difficult to define because postmodernism rejects the existence of objectively true definitions. It is a body of beliefs that rejects the existence of true beliefs. It is a system of thought that rejects the existence of all systems. In short, postmodernism is thoroughly self-contradictory and self-refuting. However, if there is one thing that contemporary politics in the U.S. and beyond has taught us, unapologetic and enthusiastic incoherence in no way precludes a way of thinking from becoming massively influential. Such is the case with postmodernism, a once obscure academic theory that progressivism has fed off, altered, and now made politically mainstream. To understand postmodernism, we can, in the spirit of postmodernism, begin with a linguistic analysis. Postmodernism supersedes modernism, the post meaning it coming after. But what then does modernism mean? Philosophers can and do spend their whole careers burrowing into the nuances within and relationships between intellectual movements because they are indeed complex. However, modernism tends to refer to the thought of the Enlightenment, which in turn is composed of three main strands. One, the deistic classical metaphysics of thinkers like Voltaire, Leibniz, and Thomas Jefferson. Two, the non-metaphysical rationalism of thinkers like Immanuel Kant. And three, the non-metaphysical empiricism of thinkers like David Hume. These three schools of thought profoundly disagree with each other on the question of the nature of existence, including human existence. Yet all agree that human reason has the capacity to provide objectively true rational answers to those questions. Indeed, that is what primarily unites them as Enlightenment philosophies. They affirm both the existence of universal human reason and the independence of that reason from any kind of biblical conception of God. This is where the post enters the history of ideas, stage left. For all the differences among postmodern theorists, one characteristic that unites them all is their categorical rejection of the Enlightenment belief that human reason can provide any objectively true insight into the nature of existence and human existence, including the nature of human reason itself. While the intellectual genealogy leading to this position is multifaceted, it passes through a turn to the study of human language and how, according to postmodernists, language, and especially the content of language, is not an inherent and universally shared characteristic of humanity, but rather a socially constructed phenomenon that is generated by those in the linguistic community who hold the most power over others. You can probably already see a postmodern origin story syllogism forming here, even though postmodernism rejects the validity of syllogisms. It goes something like this. Rationality is the product of human language. Human language is a social construction. Therefore, rationality is the product of a social construction. Another way of stating this conclusion is to say that rationality is arbitrary. It contains no true objective content and is ultimately only what the powerful say it is. There's no such thing as truth, only power. That is postmodernism in a nutshell. The only thing that really exists in any domain of human existence is power. How and why progressive ideology takes a fancy to postmodernism is it's likely already becoming apparent, but there's a few more implications to tease out before making that connection directly. First, if it is true that there is no truth, then it is consequently true that there is no moral truth in particular. There is no objective difference between good and bad and right and wrong. Second, given that language is a social rather than individual construction, and control of the language is the ultimate foundation to power, postmodernism has a keen interest not just in power per se, but in group power. Third, if it is true that the only thing that is real is group power, then everything in human existence, the human individual, the human family, the economy, entertainment, sports, etc., becomes politicized. Because the only purpose anything in human life has is gaining or maintaining group power. Fourth, since there is no shared universal rationality that exists beneath or around groups competing for power, the only way to settle a dispute among groups is by exercising dominant power over your group's competitors. Now, to be sure, this does not mean that all disputes must be settled by physical violence. All things considered, it would be better for a group to beat other groups by, for example, getting them to destroy themselves by fomenting internal strife. That limits, if not prevents, your own group casualties while weakening your competitors. Yet, since postmodernism denies the existence of a universal objective good, physical violence to dominate another group is not morally prohibited. Fifth, and related, if there's no common rationality among groups, then the only way groups can ally with each other is either A, offering other groups something they want, or by B, identifying a shared enemy that both groups want to topple because of its perceived dominance. And we will see how progressivism calls this intersectionality in a future lecture. Sixth, and finally, any attempt to criticize the actions of one group by another group can be immediately diffused by the claim that this is our truth, or this is our lived experience. Since truth and experience are entirely socially constructed concepts in postmodernism, any group statement about the nature of reality, morality, or politics cannot be rationally contested by any other group. Whatever a group says is by definition true simply because they say it. Progressivism adopts all these tenets of postmodernism while, as we've seen with the other ideologies, rendering them more politically potent. Remember that postmodernism holds that morality is a social construction, which means that any group that claims its vision of morality is right should be met by all other groups, not only with skepticism, but with outright denial. No group can be right because no group can be wrong. It's all a wash. Progressive ideology embraces this moral relativism. However, it concurrently adopts a moralistic imperiousness towards all competing political viewpoints, rejecting its critics not only as intellectually mistaken, but also frequently as corrupt, if not depraved. Progressive ideology's mutation of postmodernism, in other words, produces a strange combination of moral nihilism on the one hand, the belief that there are no universal objective moral truths, with chauvinistic moral certainty on the other hand, the belief that their point of view is intellectually and morally superior to all others simply because it is their point of view. This oxymoronic form of thinking permeates contemporary culture in the United States and much of the West. However, one recent instantiation is particularly notable because it comes from a U.S. government-funded institution dedicated to educating the American public, the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture. In the summer of 2020, the museum published an infographic titled, quote, "Aspects and Assumptions of White Culture and Whiteness in the United States," unquote. According to the infographic, which again was produced by one of the most influential educational institutions in the world, whiteness, quote, refers to the ways white people and their traditions, attitudes, and ways of life have been normalized over time and are now considered standard practices in the United States. And since white people still hold most of the institutional power in America, we have all internalized some aspects of white culture, including people of color, unquote. Now, begging the question of how a skin color can intrinsically determine a culture, analogous, we could say that height intrinsically determines personality or age intrinsically determines sociability, the document goes on to specify numerous features of whiteness, including, and I am directly quoting again here, self-reliance, independence and autonomy, being highly valued and rewarded, the nuclear family, father, mother, 2.3 children is the ideal social unit, wife is homemaker and subordinate to husband, objective, rational, linear thinking, cause and effect relationships, hard work is key to success, no toleration for deviation from single God concept, plan for the future, and finally, progress is always best. Now, first note that according to the Smithsonian, having pale skin means that, by definition, you are a patriarchal tyrant and religious bigot. I feel like there's a good word to describe negative blanket generalizations of racial groups. Yet the statements in this list that are most relevant to showing how progressivism appropriates and politicizes postmodernism are that whiteness entails A, engaging in objective, rational, linear thinking, and B, upholding the belief in cause and effect relationships. To claim that objective, rational, linear thinking and the recognition of cause and effect relationships is not universal to all human beings, that it only belongs to a particular group, whites, is equivalent to claiming that there is no such thing as universally objective human rationality. This assertion confirms the first principle of postmodernism. Objective universal truth does not exist because truth is socially constructed. That is precisely what the Smithsonian document is implying in its description of rationality pertaining specifically to whiteness. It also entails the conclusion that non-white people are not rational or capable of rationality, which sounds racist. However, there's another claim smuggled in here between the lines. If someone says, well, I believe that there is such a thing as universally objective rationality, then that person, according to the document's logic, is not only mistaken, but actually engaged in the act of embracing whiteness over and against all other racial groups. In other words, disagreeing with the Smithsonian document on rational grounds makes you a racist in general and a white supremacist in particular. This is the deviously clever sleight of hand progressivism plays with its use of postmodernism. On the one hand, it denies the existence of objective truth altogether, and on the other hand, it asserts that mere disagreement with that position is a severe moral defect. That leaves the befuddled observer of this ideological ploy two options. Either submit to what the identity group is saying, shut up and obey, or go ahead and use supremacist rationality to disagree with the identity group and thereby prove that you are in fact guilty of everything they are accusing you of. In short, thanks to the modified intellectual contributions of postmodernism, progressivism has the rhetorical tools to proclaim, heads we win, tails you lose. Unsurprisingly, this feature of progressive ideology makes it exceedingly attractive to those who have a taste for wanting to get other people to do what they want them to do merely because they want them to do it. People otherwise known as tyrants. In the next two lectures, we'll turn to another ideology called post-colonialism. Like postmodernism, post-colonialism has had a profound influence on progressivism. Also like postmodernism, post-colonialism adopts and politically weaponizes moral relativism. However, as we'll see, it adds an additional dimension that progressivism also finds useful in advancing its political goals: a division of the world into two, and only two, contending groups: oppressors versus the oppressed. See you next time.